Rise and shout. The Cougars are out, baby. Coming back with a game against Arkansas. Pretty excited for this one. Brandon, how are you feeling about this game?
Man, I am also feeling really excited, especially after the game last week. It just seemed like things went a little bit better than they did in week one. And this is going to be a great game. We're going to Arkansas and going to Fayetteville this time. And yeah, I'm just excited for a rematch against the Razorbacks.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. As Brandon was saying, a rematch. The Razorbacks came to Provo. It was a close game in the beginning, but they ended up pulling ahead and kind of putting. Yeah, it was kind of a blowout towards the end of the game,
Yeah.
and so I'm feeling that it'll be a closer game this time around. Uh, both of these teams. What's interesting is both of these teams are coming off of one game that they looked good in, and the other game that the fans and coaching felt that they should have done better in. So it's interesting to see
Yep.
that both teams are coming in with that, and so both teams are going to be playing with a little bit of kind of pressure on them to perform again, and so I think it's shaping up for a great matchup.
Yep. So that's why I got this current outlook. So kind of where each team is at. I like what you said, and I was kind of going to say the same thing is each team has had one game where they played the way they should. So for Arkansas, that was week one, and then for BYU, that was week two. And then last week, BYU with the 41-16 victory over SUU, things kind of went the way we wanted, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Defense still played pretty solid, but Arkansas, on the other hand, really kind of struggled against Kent State. And Kent State's a team that got blown out by UCF in week one, I believe, and then week two they go and give Arkansas a game in their home opener. Listening to the press conference from Sam Pittman, their head coach, after the game, he seemed kind of deflated and just like not
Yeah,
very happy with the win. I don't know if you watched any of that,
yeah, I
but
did.
just kind of frustrated is kind of what he seemed like, and it's kind of like how we saw Kalani after week one as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Watching his press conference, he kept saying that he had talked to the Kent State coach, told him that he felt the score didn't reflect how the game had actually gone, that it felt a lot closer. He
Mm-hmm.
talked about just not being able to run the ball, missing blocks. So it definitely felt like he knows the team can play better, or at least is hoping to improve in a way that makes them better. So I think there'll be expect Arkansas to come out trying to prove something, which is a little worrisome for BYU, who's coming off the SUU. Will still come to play, but Arkansas is coming off of what BYU came off of with Sam Houston, a game where they underperformed against a team they should have, and are going to try to take it out on the next team, showing what they are actually capable of.
Yeah, and I think for Arkansas, it almost felt like they were looking ahead a week to LSU, which is their SEC opener. I got that I don't know if it was the energy or the vibe from Sam Pittman in his press conference, but it seemed like they really want to get things going, get things right before SEC play starts. And they play LSU, who's I think a pretty good team. They did lose to Florida State in week one, but I think they're a pretty solid football team. And also speaking about Arkansas, their defense has kind of been their bright spot, I guess, this year. Whereas last year we saw a BYU Arkansas matchup that was kind of a blowout, but in like a big boom offensive way, where even BYU put up over 35 points and Arkansas
Yes.
put up over 50. I just see it not going that way this year, and that's just because both of the defenses, BYU's and Arkansas, are playing really, really well. And it's going to kind of be, and kind of on the offensive side of the ball, they're both struggling a little bit, at least in one game that they played so far. So, what's your kind of going, I guess, looking at Arkansas's past two games, what's your vibe from them? Because my vibe from them is they're looking forward to LSU. Maybe this is a trap game. Maybe BYU can catch them off guard, but I think they're trying to kind of use this as a get right game and kind of figure things out going into the SEC. What's your vibe, Tanner?
Yeah, yeah. So what you highlighted with the defense, I felt is so true as they're going into the SEC. Into the SEC opener. The SEC's tough, right? You've got a bunch of good teams in there, and so, but their defense is holding teams at least this year. I know it's against Kent State and Western Carolina, but only 45 rushing yards per game, which is going to play a big factor in the SEC teams. There's big players in the SEC running the ball that you got to stop up front. So that's a shining spot for Arkansas, and is going to come into play against BYU, right? Who's only averaging about 79, but expect
Yeah.
Arkansas's defense to show up in the SEC. They've showed up in these two games. I think that'll be a strong point for them in the games coming up in the SEC, which will challenge them definitely.
Yeah, the rush defense is phenomenal. They're really holding the line well on the defense side of the ball. So it's going to be interesting to see BYU's offensive line go up against them and kind of see how they match up. But I'm also on the offensive side of the ball. They didn't run the ball super well. I mean, they ended the game against Kent State running the ball. They drained 6 minutes off the clock, led them to a score, but they're without their star running back Rocket Sanders, which what a sweet nickname, Rocket.
Yeah.
And they don't really know when they're going to get him back, but he is ruled out for this game again. And so they really don't have that star running back. And so while their defense is stopping the run really well, on the offensive side of the ball, they're struggling to run it as well as they hope. And BYU is kind of the same story. What do you think about how is BYU going to get the running game going against Arkansas?
Yeah, so I think what's important is in Kalani's press conference, it was interesting. They asked him a question about why Robbins didn't see any touches after a certain point in the game, and Kalani said that he wasn't concerned. He wasn't worried about who was getting touches. He was worried
Yeah.
about just getting quality touches, who was going to show up and make it happen. I know there's been some questions around the organization, as in why is Martin not starting the game? Robbins in the last two games has not had any breakout kind of shining moments where we've seen Martin come in both times later in the game and his first play go for positive yards. So it's interesting to see how they're going to get the run game going. Not running great against SUU. This should have been a team that we saw 100+ yards for Martin breaking through the line. And so that could have been SUU's got a better run defense, but I'm thinking there might be something going on in the running back position of trying to understand who's supposed to be the star, right? It was supposed to be Robbins. It was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be him coming over, transferring. He was going to be the guy, and all of a sudden we see Martin, and he's making stuff happen. So I'm interested to see if they make that switch now that we've seen 2 weeks in a row, limited production from Robbins and production coming from Martin. If they will make that switch, that I think fans are wanting to see, and if Martin can show up in a big way, it'd be awesome to see him against Arkansas have some explosive games, and it'll be tough against this Arkansas team. But if they can find a way to make that happen, I think we'll find a lot of success in a dual threat against Arkansas instead of solely hoping that Slovis can have some accurate passes. We need to be attacking Arkansas in two ways.
Yeah, that's not a question, and I'm going to kind of get to that in my prophecies. But I think L.J. Martin, or at least the running game in general, needs to make a bigger impact. Aiden Robbins comes in from UNLV, and you kind of expect him to be the guy. And honestly, I expected him to do really well here, especially behind the offensive line. We have kind of expected to be really dominant on the offensive line, which should translate to a great running game and should translate to lots of throwing time for Slovis. And we've seen it up and down through the first 2 weeks on the offensive line. So I don't know if it's two things. It could be an offensive line problem or it's a running back problem. And maybe the running backs aren't being patient enough and hitting their holes, or they're just not seeing the field the way they should. But LJ Martin had a good run in the SUU game where he broke off like a 20 plus yard run. And I kind of texted you. I said he looks like Jamal Williams when he runs it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and it's just hard not to make that comparison because of the way they just keep their legs moving and they don't go down when they get hit. They just keep the ball moving forward. And Jamal Williams was always one to kind of take a play that would go for 0 yards and make it a 5, 6 yard gain. So
Yes.
I think LJ Martin has that ability. I'd like to see Aiden Robbins do well, but I just don't know if he's going to get the carries going forward.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what they do.
I'd love to see a competition at that, not in a positive way. I'd love to see, let's say this week, Robbins steps up and has an incredible game. We need that at BYU. We need a little deeper depth at that running back position, like some of these other schools has. We've always had the one star and a supporting cast. It'd be nice to see two guys up there that continue to flip flop, whether we're handing it off to Robbins or handing it off to Martin. They're getting yards. And
Yeah,
so I think it could be an offensive line. This is a talented, one of the most talented offensive BYU lines we've seen. But yet pressure coming to Slovis was ridiculous against SUU. And that could play into that run game.
especially the first quarter. It was just
Yes.
awful.
And we'll get into that at Slovis good coming up, but we'll get into
Yeah.
that. He needs time to throw. And so expect that to play a part if the offensive line can't keep the pressure off.
Yeah, just one last thought on the running game before we move into is Slovis good. I think they have that potential to be a good 1-2 punch, Robbins and LJ Martin, and just keeping them fresh and rotating them in. And no matter who's on the field, whether it's Robbins or Martin, they can break off a big run. And we've seen it from Martin. We saw it week one. He ran the ball really well, but we just haven't seen it from Robbins yet. So hopefully week three we can see Robbins kind of break a few runs off and get going. So moving on to is Slovis good? You were at the game. You got to see him in person. What were your thoughts about his performance?
Yeah, like I said, even against Sam Houston, he always looked comfortable in the pocket, right? He's a pocket passer, he drops back, but he needs his time. He From what I saw in SUU, the times that his passes weren't the most accurate, and he did have some when this happened that were accurate, was when he was having to move, kind of the across the body throws. We need to be seeing him just drop back, getting set, and delivering those passes, getting that time. He had to scramble quite a bit, but he threw some very accurate passes. We saw the one to Rex that was very dangerous into triple coverage that ended up
Yeah,
being a
just
great
snuck
play.
it right through.
So yeah, he can make plays and he will make plays this year. I'm comfortable with him at the quarterback position. I think there's different parts that need to be come into place with the offensive line and receivers getting open, and we'll be able to make some stuff happen. I think it's a well primed machine that's ready to go. If the right parts get working, then this machine will fire up and will be a high powered offense that we're used to seeing when the quarterback, receivers, and running backs all mesh. So
Yeah, he proved a couple things, which was if he has time, he can make the throws he needs to. And with this offensive line, you expect that as they maybe get things clicking, whatever it is, that he's going to be pretty effective through the air. And this game against SUU, I mean, it is SUU, but he had 4 touchdowns, threw for a lot of yards. He had one interception, but I think that's mostly because he was under pressure. He kind of got hit
and he got
as he
hit as
threw
he
it.
was throwing. Yeah.
And so, out of all the interceptions you could have thrown, that's one that I'm kind of okay with. But you'd like to see him maybe hold on to it or get rid of it before, but it didn't end up hurting BYU that much. So in the
No.
long run, it was okay. Make the mistake, but I think he showed a lot of potential to move the ball through the air, and that BYU can be a threat in the passing game. Kind of the opposite of week one, where they ran the ball pretty well and didn't throw the ball well. Interesting thing that Sam Pittman said though in his press conference when they asked about BYU, he said Sam Houston is. He was like, I think Sam Houston's a really good team. They have a really good defense. And I went and looked. Sam Houston played Air Force last week and held Air Force to 13 points as well. So I think Sam Houston's kind of like they got a really tough defense. So maybe week one isn't going to end up being a big red flag. But I think Arkansas coming into this game, their red flag is on the offensive side of the ball because they know UCF put up over 50 points on that defense, but they've really struggled to put up 28. So getting into the prophecies, we decided we're calling this our 3 winning prophecies. We'll start with Arkansas, the favorite. They're favored by 9.5 points. What are the 3 things that they need to do to win this game?
Yes. Let me get into that. So I was looking at kind of weapons they have. KJ Jefferson, right? If he's the same quarterback coming in, he's lost some weapons, yes, on his receivers than when he first played BYU. But let's not forget this is the quarterback that had 5 touchdowns against the Cougars last year, throwing for 367. Right? He's done it once, he can do it again. Having KJ Jefferson having a big game and hoping to see a little more rushing from him. I know they've been saying they haven't wanted to rush him, but he rushed for I believe it was 30 something against BYU, and we haven't really seen a rush yet against our defense. So it'll be interesting to see if a quarterback, someone that can kind of scramble out of it, if BYU's ready
Mm-hmm.
for that. So I think KJ Jefferson, big game, comes into play to have them win.
Yep.
And then finding something with the rushing, right? Getting a spark against BYU's defense and getting it done. And then finally, it was just the defense coming up strong again, 40, averaging that 45, showing that they are for real against this BYU team, keeping the running backs to low numbers like SUU did. I think those are their keys to winning this game.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on a lot of things. Speaking of KJ Jefferson, one of my winning prophecies, so those are your 3: KJ Jefferson, getting the run game going, and then defense kind of holding BYU's running game, right? Those are your 3?
Yes.
Yeah, so I got KJ Jefferson. I think he needs to be more aggressive in the running game. That's my first key, is if he can get out and make some, third down conversions, grab some first downs on the ground by using his legs, I think BYU, I don't know what their defense, I don't know what Jay Hill's going to do to prepare for a running quarterback, but it's something they haven't seen yet. And so he has that talent to get out of the pocket and get on the ground. We saw it last year a little bit against BYU, and I think he can do the same. If he does that, I think that's a good indicator that Arkansas wins this game. My second one is that. Sorry, my cat's meowing. But they have to run for 150 yards. That's my second key. I think if they grab 150 yards on the ground, they probably have won this game. Just getting their running game going and kind of opening up the passing game for KJ Jefferson as well will help their offense get flowing. They ran the ball really well at the end of the game against Kent State, kind of too little too late. I mean, they won the game 28-6, but if they can keep that momentum going, then they have a good chance. Another point is their offensive line. They've kind of been rotating guys in and out, it seems like. They don't really have a solid 5 on their offensive line. And so if they can figure out which players are going to be playing on offensive line and get the running game going, then they'll have a good chance. And then number 3 is putting Keaton Slovis under pressure. If their defense can maybe bring in some blitzes or get pressure with the 4 down, whatever it is, then they have a good chance of winning this game. If they can keep Slovis kind of uncomfortable the whole game, then they have a good chance of winning. Because I don't think Slovis, that might be his biggest weakness, is under pressure. He seems to not throw as accurate. He's throwing some balls away, which is fine, but he's just not making the plays he needs to when he's under pressure. So those are my 3 points. Do you have any thoughts on those 3 points, Tanner?
No, I'd agree with you, and I think sound very similar to the same things we're going to say for BYU. But I think I think you hit it on the head with getting pressure on Slovis. If they can force him to feel uncomfortable in that pocket, I think they're going to find great success. We've seen interceptions from him in the past, and if they can get the pressure on him, I would not be surprised to see 2 interceptions in this game if they bring that pressure on Slovis.
Yep.
A little
So
bold prediction, but
yeah, no, totally. So I'll get into my 3 winning prophecies for BYU. So they're the underdog. They're going into Fayetteville on the road. Things are kind of stacked against them. This isn't a game that we both picked them to lose this game starting the season. I'm trying to avoid getting into the hype because like everything makes me want to pick BYU to win this game because that's just how us BYU fans are. It's like they give you a little bit of little slice of hope, and you think things are going to be different. I think I still don't know if they win this game, but here's the 3 points they need to do to win. One is run first offense. They need to move the ball on the ground with LJ Martin and Robbins, like we said. And I think that will kind of take the pressure off Slovis a little bit. He won't have to do everything. If they're running the ball well, it opens up play action. It'll give Slovis more time to operate. So I think running the ball really well is kind of a key to this game. If we can grab, it might not even need to be 150, like I said, for Arkansas, but maybe 100 yards on the ground, we have a good chance of winning this game. Number two is kind of the opposite of what I said for Arkansas, but give Slovis time. If they can give Slovis enough time to step back, go through his progressions, I think they have a good chance. I know he's going to make the plays. We saw it against SEU, and I don't think the type of throws he was making against SEU are the types of throws that he can make against Arkansas. I don't think it's going to change much because there was some throws he got in there in tight windows, receivers got open, and we didn't talk about this, but Cody Epps might be back. I think
Yes, I did hear that.
Kalani said in the post game that Cody Epps should be back. So I'm going to count on him being back, and I think that's going to open things up a lot as well. And then the last point is they had to win the turnover margin. So I think they're going to have to create a turnover or two in this game, or whether it's a interception or fumble or maybe a blocked punt or blocked field goal, something like that. I think that will really help BYU in this game if they can win the turnover margin. They can get an interception, and if Slovis doesn't throw any, then I think they have a good chance of winning this game. What are your three winning prophecies for BYU? How are they going to win this game? If you're Coach Sataki, you're getting BYU ready for this game. What are the three main areas of focus?
Yes, I put first Arkansas is averaging 11 yards per pass. We need to get that number down below 5. So shutting down the pass game, which is something against SUU that I thought they kind of struggled with. It seemed like there were some deep balls that
There were
seemed to
some
just
big plays that
continue.
SUU
Yeah.
got. Yeah.
And so we need to find a way. Arkansas's with that 11 yards, we can't be seeing them marching down the field, first down, throw, first down, throw, first down. We can't. BYU cannot survive if that is the case. So BYU's first way to beat Arkansas is bring that down, either bringing pressure to KJ Jefferson and keeping him contained, or it's breaking up passes, keeping the coverage. Second, I said score, score, score. We need numbers like against SUU, which will be tough against Arkansas's defense. But I said score, score, score. And how do we get that? We find success in the passing game and more importantly in the run game. So thirdly, the run game. We have to be that dual threat. And it's like you said, we've got to have that run game so that we're not solely relying on Slovis, who will be getting pressured. If we can get those running backs going, open up some routes that'll get open and execute on those. Those are the three things I think comes up with a BYU victory if they can capitalize on those things.
Oh yeah, for sure. I didn't think about your first point there, but shutting down the pass attack. KJ Jefferson has 382 yards this year, 5 passing touchdowns. They seem to move the ball pretty good through the air. But a point that Sam Pittman, the coach, made as well was like they haven't had a lot of explosive plays of like deep throws down the field, things like that. A lot of good gains, but nothing explosive. And I think BYU's defense kind of they have that potential to give up the explosive play here and there because they're going to be aggressive. They're going to blitz corners, they're going to blitz linebackers, and that kind of leaves them open for big plays. So we'll see if Arkansas can. It's either going to be that because they haven't had any explosive plays, it's a good thing for BYU's defense because that means they can just do what they've been doing, or it could mean that they're waiting to have those explosive plays against BYU's defense because BYU's defense is going to give them a chance to do that. So
because they know that
shutting down the
come.
pass, yeah. Robinson has played well. Hecker, the Weber State transfer, he's played well, especially in week one. They played significantly well with the 3 interceptions. So if they can do that against Arkansas, I think, like you said, they have a good chance.
Yeah.
So getting into picks, so we'll talk about the over/under, maybe talk about the line a little bit. What do you think about the over/under here, 51? Last year, they had over 80 points combined. Was it over 90? What was the score last year? It was like
It
fifty-five
was
thirty-eight or
50
something.
something, or it may have been only 40 for, I think it may have been 40 something, 20 something. If you could look that up. But
Let's see.
if,
Yeah.
if it all just depends on what defense we get from both teams. My prediction is one defense is going to show up more than the other. And so getting into the picks with the over under, personally, I see it being, let's see, my pick does go over, correct? With what we're going to shore for my pick.
No, under.
No, it doesn't. Under. So
Yeah.
under on that. I've got one defense showing up in and we'll show when we pick it. One defense will show up and it'll be the same team that whose offense shows up. And I think it will be under that 51.
Yeah. I do as well. So look, yeah, I just pulled up last year. It looks like it was 52-35. Arkansas won. So that's 87 points there. I don't see that happening this year. I think
No.
both offenses are kind of not struggling, but just kind of like coasting, trying to figure out, BYU's trying to figure out who's the starting running back. They're trying to figure out how do we get Slovis time. And I think on the other side, Arkansas is struggling to get the running game going with Rocket Sanders being out due to injury. So I see this game going under as well. I I don't see this being a high scoring game like it was last year. I think it's going to be really tight, and I think it's going to be a defensive battle. It might be kind of frustrating as a fan of BYU and as a fan of Arkansas sometimes during this game because there's going to be some punts, there's going to be some 3-and-outs, things like that. So getting in to the spread, and then we'll go to our score predictions. Where do you think this game goes? Do you think it's an Arkansas covers? Do you think BYU, keeps it tight and covers on the road? What do you think, Tanner?
Yeah, so I have Arkansas covering. And it's interesting because I like looking into past trends, what has happened, and it actually goes against the way I see the game going. So Pittman, the coach, under him as the home favorite, they are 6-6. Now they do play in that SEC, so they've seen some bigger teams that they've played, but 6-6 against the spread when they're the home favorite. Where BYU, when they are the away and they are the underdog, they are 13-5 under Sataki for covering the spread. So I think they're a team that when those odds come out are the odds makers are putting them up against the challenge. And 13 of those times they've showed up and they've covered the spread, performing better than people thought they would, at least in not winning the games, but at least in where they were on the spread. But that goes against the way I see it. I see it Arkansas covering that 9.5. It could be a close game. It could only be a 7-1, but I don't see it with the way BYU's performed. I think we got some answers, but I don't think all of those things are answered. We haven't seen them against a caliber team, and I just see Arkansas showing up in this game.
Yeah, so I'll pop up your score prediction here. You had Arkansas winning 31-17, right?
Yes.
Sweet. So
Okay.
there's the analytics, and then I just thought of this, the Tanalytics.
Yeah.
The Tanalytics say take Arkansas. Is that right? Is that just a gut feeling, or what do you think Arkansas? What do you see from them that makes you think they're going to cover?
It's
What's the
just
main thing?
Yeah, so their running back out is a little scary, right? And we haven't really seen the rush from Pittman. I know they've said that they were trying not to in certain situations, so I don't know if there's a new scheme. They've lost a lot of receivers, but it's just my gut feeling of looking at Arkansas, of who they've been in the past and what they can be as compared to BYU with what I've seen in the past and what they can be. It's tough. I oftentimes will steer on the other side of BYU simply because I've seen it many times where, like you said, we get a glimpse of hope, and then usually we get a pretty big wake up call. And in this one, I think I just see the offense probably struggling against the defense, and so I see it being BYU's offense just can't get it going, and Arkansas does get it together and scores. So
Yeah. So I'm on the other side here. I got BYU covering, and I'm just trusting Kalani on the road as a road dog, 13-5, like you said. He gets his game. He gets up on the road. I mean, we saw a pretty, I don't know, average BYU team go into Wisconsin and beat them. We've seen road wins from Kalani. He can get his team going for those games. So I don't know if the road away really plays a factor in this game. I'm more looking at who is each team and where are they at. So I have BYU covering. I think both teams struggle offensively. I want to pop up my score prediction here. I don't have BYU winning this game. I'm going to take away this banner. But I do have it as a close game, 24-20, Arkansas. They win, but BYU shows, that they can hang with the big SEC boys like Arkansas. So the way I see this game kind of going is a lot of both teams trying to get the run game going, clock running quite a bit, not a lot of possessions for each team, and Arkansas pulling it out late. Maybe BYU has the lead going into the fourth. I don't know. I just see this being a close game for BYU on the road, but them just not quite being able to pull it out. So, and I also have the under, like I said, 44 total points here. Arkansas squeezing out the 24-20 win going into SEC play. BYU, first loss of the season before they play Cincinnati. So, any closing thoughts on this? I mean, we both kind of have a defensive battle. We both have it going under. What do you think? I don't know. What do you think? I don't know what I'm going to ask, but what do you think the way this game kind of goes? I have it kind of being a tight, but do you see Arkansas getting up early or?
I see this game the way it always plays out in my mind is one of these teams, whether it's Arkansas or BYU, is going to be the dominant team. I don't see it being a shootout of where we're seeing, wow, both teams are having a flawless game. You know, I see it being one of these teams is going to show, okay, we've got it figured out. It's week 3. We've brought it together. We've learned from our other games. And the other team is going to be left scratching their head at the end of the game saying, what is wrong with our team? I would love for that to be the Cougars that win, not the ones scratching their heads. I would love to be the dominant team. We see one of those BYU teams that comes in, minus 9.5, but wins by 14 or 17, and we can hold our heads high going into the Big 12. But just as quick as it could be that, it could be Arkansas getting pressure to Slovis. Things fall apart. There's so much pressure on the defense that it's just too much. And Arkansas comes out saying, we figured it out. We're ready for our conference play. Those are the two ways I see it.
Yeah.
And what about you?
Well, I remember my question now that I blanked
Okay.
on. It was if BYU wins this game on the road, what does that do? How does it change the way you think the Big 12 season goes? So I'll answer first since you just answered. But so if BYU wins, it really actually changes my outlook of the Big 12 quite a bit because this is a game I didn't see BYU winning, and if they can win a game like this, they might be able to beat Kansas, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's not as good as I thought they would be, so I think they can win that game. Texas Tech. Texas Tech's not maybe as good as we thought they would be. They started at 0-2. So there's a lot of games in the Big 12. Cincinnati, which we had as a win, but there's a lot of games in the Big 12 I think BYU can win, especially starting 3-0. Bowl game is bowl game or bust, I think, if they beat Arkansas for me. And that's kind of like getting a little hyped and getting, too early. But what does this do for you if BYU wins this game? How do you look at the Big 12 after that, going into
Yes.
the Big 12?
So it'll be a way to look at what finally shines in the big game. Is it going to be the offense? And we can count on our offense to come in and say, when we go on the road or when we're the underdog, we can hang in it with our offense. Or is it going to be the defense? And we're going to say, we may not be scoring as explosive, but we've got our defense we fall back on. And they're holding bigger teams like Arkansas to lower numbers and stopping the run game. That's what would get me excited and a better understanding for the Big 12 is what side of the ball is going to show up, if not both. If we can have one of just an explosive game on the offense and a firm on the defense, wow. Then we go into the Big 12 and we hang with some of the big dogs. But I think this will be the final. You've had your two other games that you should have won. This is the game that is the first game that's supposed to feel a little bit more up in the air, and it will answer those questions for real, I think, of what this team can become or what this team is that you're stuck with for the rest of the year.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And this is also the first road game, so it's the first game that we're supposed to lose, first road game, and if they can win, it's kind of against all odds, right? So they just will exceed expectations, I think, from there on out. And yeah, I'm interested to see which side of the ball shines. I'm hoping it's both, and if it's both, then we might have a good season ahead of us. So any other closing thoughts on this matchup? I think it's two teams kind of coming off two different weeks, and both teams just trying to figure out who they are going into the conference play. What do you think? Any closing
No,
thoughts?
nothing new. I think I said it. It's going to be a
Yeah,
game where somebody shows that they're the dominant team, and one fan base will be excited, and the other will be left wondering what to do now.
yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, that was a pretty deep dive into this game. I think we covered a lot of points. If you have any comments, go ahead and comment below. If you watch this far, you should subscribe because you spent 37 plus minutes watching us. So don't waste all that time just to not subscribe. And yeah, let us know your picks down below and what you see from each team. If you're an Arkansas fan, please give us more information because we're probably missing some stuff. So yeah, any uh, any advice to the audience, Tanner?
No, yeah, just like you said, if you found us and you stayed 37 minutes, thank you. Thank you so much. It really does mean a lot. And I can't express that enough of, we put together this thing for the game. It's just two friends putting something out there. So if you found us and you even enjoyed it a little bit, subscribe. We'll continue to do it. But thank you to everyone who listens.
Yeah, and we'll be covering every BYU game and big games around the Big 12. Any big games, just we kind of right now are just doing whatever we feel like, but we're especially doing everything BYU here. So we'll see you guys on the next one.
So yeah.